It's Friday. We are live on the Red Tinted Glasses YouTube channel. And Callum, wow, there is a lot to talk about. I knew a week is a long time in football, but my word of Aberdeen Football Club tried to cram as much possible into this week. Also helps if you take your mic off mute.
That way, and then I accidentally clicked off the thing, so that was a nightmare. But that probably is a symbol for how chaotic this episode's going to be, because, my God, we have been very, very busy. Strap in, folks, because we've got a lot to discuss. We're going to try and keep it as concise as possible, but given all the topics that we've got to cover, might be difficult.
Yeah, no mini pods here, one gigantic podcast with lots to fit in. And I suppose, Callum, there's no better place to start. Here's my attempt at graphic design with some breaking news as the club revealed next season's kit. Image, of course, taken from the club website. Thank you very much. Excellent modelling by Conor Ronan and Ross McCrory, showing both the home and away kit. Callum, obviously, we've seen this about 10 minutes before going live. So what is your first reaction to seeing those kits?
I mean, they are absolutely stunning, aren't they? I love the pinstripes. They are fantastic. I quite like the little touch of the stars on the sleeve. I don't know. It's just a bit different. The badge is something else. I didn't expect that whatsoever, but I quite like that take on it. And then the away kit as well. Oh my God, that is stunning too. I'm a massive fan. I've got a feeling a lot of people's bank balances are going to be rinsed, and rightly so. And it took a while for them to be released. Can't complain. Unbelievable. That's the best kits I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, when Rob Wick said, fans will be excited about the kits and it's probably going to be the best kits we've done in a while, I was a bit pessimistic because probably says that every year, but I definitely can't complain this year. They've really knocked out of the park with those kits. Even, as you said, they've changed the badge, looking at that there on the home kit, but they've still kept the 2 stars that's been moved to the sleeve shown there. But yeah, both kits absolutely stunning. I'm just glad it's my birthday next month and it won't be my bank balance that's getting rinsed on this occasion. I think it might be the first time in a while I actually fancy buying both kits.
I know. Lucky you. That's all I'm going to say with your birthday coming up. Well done.
Yeah. It's been an exciting week, Callum. Obviously, loads of signings in the door for you as well. You've had the NBA draft. Tom Grennan's released is in the process of releasing a new album as well. So it's really all go for you. But it's signings that we are here to talk about as the revolution or evolution, for those of you that watched Jim Goodwin's latest press conference on Red TV, as he was asked, is well underway. Obviously, with the sale of Calvin Ramsey going through on Sunday, I think it was quite obvious, Callum, that we were almost waiting for that to be confirmed before we started seeing the influx of new faces at Pittodrie.
Basically, I mean, it was a deal that worked out for absolutely everybody. Now they've got that money, and I'm delighted to see that we've actually not been reluctant in spending it as well. Not going, too crazy, too wild, but it's good to see Jim Goodwin getting some of that money back to reinvest in the squad and use it as the platform for that rebuild, which, yes, we very much needed. And it's also very good to see in his comments that he's grateful that he's been allowed to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the first signing in the door was from Nottingham Forest, Jayden Richardson, the 21-year-old right-back, signing on a 3-year deal. I guess, Calm, no real surprise that we were replacing one right-back with another.
Absolutely not. And I mean, obviously not a player we know too much about, but very young, explosive perhaps, but good to see that we got a right back straight in the door immediately because, well, we needed it because we had Ross McCrory. And even then, we don't know if he's going to be deployed at right back much this season at all. So I'm glad they acted very, very quickly on that and just carried on from there like a steam train, basically.
Yeah, we'll get to the ones later on, obviously. We might see Jaden in the new kit on tomorrow at Buckie. Emma, JT in the comments on YouTube. Thanks for interacting with the show, Emma. Saying it makes a difference seeing every single comment on Aberdeen Twitter being positive of we finally agreed on something. Hey, we should be taking this moment to enjoy the fact that Aberdeen Twitter is unanimous in something positive because it doesn't happen too often, does it, Callum?
Honestly, might be a first.
Well, certainly once the football gets started, I think it'll be not often that we agree this season. But back to Jayden Richardson, he had successful loan spells at both Exeter City and Forest Green Rovers, being part of the side that both teams went to the playoffs, including the playoff final with the Citizens. Last season, he spent time on loan at Notts County, finding himself into the Team of the Year in the Vanarama National League. Calum, obviously, he's not really made his name. He did have his debut this season at Nottingham Forest, but he spent a lot of time on loan. He's taken the decision to come elsewhere for first-team football, and he's found himself at Aberdeen. So, obviously, a player that's putting himself out there, willing to take that risk.
Certainly, I quite like that ambition at such a young age, willing to sort of leave Nottingham Forest, a place he's known for a very long time, obviously despite the loans, and go and test himself. I do admire it. Obviously, he's confident that he can go and hold down that first team spot with us too. I had initial concerns maybe about the fact he was on loan in the Vanarama National League, but did get himself into the team of the season rather, and there was concerns about his defence apparently from Notts County fans. But they basically said the only reason they ended up getting him and into the National League is because they were just across the Trent, and it was ideal essentially. So I'm intrigued, I think is the word I will use about that one.
Yeah, definitely. I think we've got to remember he's still a young guy, and he'll be still got a lot to learn in terms of football, and he's coming up to a new division, new style of football as well. And we did catch up with Thomas Wagstaff from the Notts County Talk podcast. And both of us have seen the DMs that he was sending, and he did say that Jayden's one of the quickest players he's seen, and he does like to push back opposition fullbacks because they kind of struggle to deal with his pace and are a bit cautious in terms of dealing with that. But he also, contradicted that with saying that defensively he's decent, but he can often get caught out. And I think, Calum, though, we did see that at times with Calvin last season as well. And I think as well that kind of nods back to, his age, and maybe have to remember that a little bit.
Certainly, much and just the same in terms of both fullbacks a lot better going forward than maybe they are defensively. Mm-hmm. But as you mentioned, at the same time, he's still got a lot of time to learn. Hopefully, he'll have two good centre backs to rely on as cover, unlike Calvin Ramsey, perhaps last season. So it's one we have reason to be excited about. Not a player either of us know too much about, but looking forward to it and lots of time to develop. Eager to come up here. I'm reasonably confident that it might work out okay.
Yeah, so am I. I mean, we won't go too much into the miss that Thomas shared with us that Jayden had against Stockport County, because that was a fair howler. But, he did say probably his weakness was in front of goal, but as a fullback, you're not really expecting him to be scoring loads of goals for us. Again, on his crossing, he said it's okay, but needs work. Again, probably something we can see developed through coaching. And, if it looked from some of the clips that Thomas did send us, he likes to drive into the box instead and, perform cutbacks instead of crossing. So I think really the sense I was getting from the Notts County guys is that he's quite raw, not quite the finished product. So he does need some fine tuning. But I suppose, again, to reiterate the point, at 21-year-old, you're probably expecting that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's if he's not the finished article. No, if he was the finished article at 21, put it this way, we wouldn't be getting him, and he'd be going on to much better things. Maybe even staying at Nottingham Forest. So that's okay. But one thing that I am, pretty happy with is the fact he's so young, only 21 years old. So he's still got plenty of time to improve. But he's also played a pretty decent amount of games to that level. Obviously, various loans as well, at an okay level to come up here with. So I'm happy with that. He's not totally inexperienced, this new kid that's not played a single game, first team game. So that's another thing that sort of eases me a little bit about this transfer.
Yeah, absolutely. And also on Monday, I suppose it would be amiss not to speak about some of the academy graduates that have stepped up and signed their first full-time contract with the football club. So congratulations to them, and also good luck with your first team adventures. So that's Alfie Babbage, the striker who was top scorer in last season's Victory Shield, Alfie Stewart, the centre mid, Cameron Wilson, wide attacking midfielder and also plays up front, Finlay Marshall, a centre mid, Kai Watson, another centre back, Fullback can play on the right side as well. And Milos Okmanski, a centre-back that's been in and out of the academy and has seemed to develop well into earning a full-time contract. So good luck to them. Obviously joining the likes of Ryan Duncan, Jack Milne, Liam Harvey and likes, going from academy to full-time football with the football club. And kind of listening to Jim Goodwin in his press conference yesterday, Callum, Jim seems to be kind of eager to give these young players a chance if they can prove worthwhile. But also, as we've seen with Ryan Duncan, especially last season, the loan system has benefited these players, getting them vital first-team experience.
Absolutely, and that can only be a good thing, that if these players are good enough despite their age, Jim Goodwin will give them that chance, which is exactly what you want. You don't want a manager that will be reluctant, even if they are very decent footballers that go, a little bit inexperienced, not going to give them their chance as of yet. And again, making use of the loan system, that will be absolutely okay too. But it's exciting, really. Anytime there's a group of young players that get those professional contracts, you think, these might be the next big deal. Don't want to put too much pressure on them, but the statement that was released from Aberdeen when they signed those contracts seemed to talk about them very, very positively. I think Alfie Bavidge, he's the coach of my mate's son. No, wait, my mate's coach's son. And apparently he's been playing, years above himself, even for Scotland as well, which can only be a good thing, as we've heard from previous guests on the show as well, when they've been playing above and being pushed on. So it's exciting times to be an Aberdeen fan, and given the season we just had, didn't think I'd be feeling so excited and positive about things, to be honest.
It's that new season and optimism that sweeps, and I think obviously with the kits being released, signings coming in this week, and Craig Grimble in the comments saying as well, with our budget, we're either going down the journeyman route or going for untested young players or emerging talents from markets off the radar. We're obviously going to come to some of that, certainly from markets off the radar. So happy to see an exciting transfer strategy at last. And I think, Callum, that is the thing that has excited fans this season, is that some of these transfers, Jayden in particular, he went under the radar, and we are, what looks like, getting some exciting players in the door.
Absolutely, it's not these Stephen Gleesons coming up, these journeyman jobbers, maybe you could describe them as. It is exciting. It does get the fans a little bit more excited as they build up towards that season moves along. So, and the fact Jaden Richardson just literally came out of the blue. Okay, a few of them we've heard about for a couple of weeks, and to be fair, not quite the leaks that there'd previously been. But still, sort of, you'd been expecting it, and maybe we'll end up getting them. Jaden Richardson completely out of the blue, and it was very, very welcome. But it is exciting the way we seem to be going about business. And Jim Goodwin also saying that he could have signed 100 players by now, but he's making sure they are the right ones as well. I'm confident, and I believe what Jim Goodwin says. I think under previous management, sometimes you're a bit like, okay, I like what he's trying to do there, I like what he's saying, but not quite got the confidence in him. I do with Jim Goodwin, so I'm pretty happy.
I think those, people will always say, though, it's all good to have the right talk, but we need to start seeing the results on the pitch. And don't get me wrong, I'm also swept up by what Jim Goodwin's saying, but, we're starting competitive football very soon, and if the results don't go the way we want, that will quickly change. But
they will go
quickly moving.
We're winning the lot. We're winning the lot. Sorry,
well, we know how that worked for you last season when you said that. So hopefully it works a lot better. But move over, Dominoes, because Aberdeen had their own 2 for Tuesday this Tuesday with a double signing, bolstering our defence with Liam Scales joining in on loan from Celtic. More on that in a minute for our thoughts on that one. And Anthony Stewart joining on a pre-contract from Wycombe Wanderers. Thank you very much, Agent Jack Grimmer. Your services have been much appreciated. Nice when we can get a wee sort of exclusive on that one, and thoughts from a former guest around the signing. And Callum, we'll discuss Liam Scales in depth on our thoughts, but I got Colin Watt's thoughts on Liam Scales joining us, obviously a former guest and member of the Celtic State of Mind podcast. And here's what he had to say about Liam Scales joining Aberdeen. Welcome back to Red Tinted Glasses, a slightly earlier appearance than I thought I was going to get you on, because we'll be catching up in a few weeks for, of course, the opening day fixture. How have you been keeping since we've last stayed in touch?
It's been a while, Glenn. It's what happens when Aberdeen don't finish in the top six. No, I'm kidding. No, I'm pretty glad that season's over. That was a disaster from start to finish, and for us, it couldn't have went much better, to be honest. So opposite ends of the scale there. But yeah, looking forward to the new season getting back up and running. I'm sure you guys are hoping to get back in the right direction, and hopefully that means I'll appear on here a couple of times more this season.
Well, hopefully in that sense. And I liked how you used the word scale, very appropriate for the discussion that we're going to have today. I'm sure a few picked up on that well-intended pun, of course. We're here to discuss, as Aberdeen signed on loan Celtic left back, the 23-year-old Irishman Liam Scales. And Colin is here to share his thoughts on the signing, obviously as a player who spent some time at Celtic last season, making 13 appearances, scoring twice, including on debut at Tannadice, if I'm correct, Colin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so once against Dundee United at Tannadice, and once at home, another thunderbolt against Wraith in the Cup. So yeah, don't get me wrong, we didn't see a lot of Liam Scales last year, but there was glimpses of what he could do and what his limitations were. And I think perhaps if a run of games up at Pittodrie, it could do his career the world of good.
Yeah, and I suppose from an Aberdeen point of view, it's certainly a view that I took last night when the deal was announced. It's yet another loan signing from Celtic. I think I said to you in our group chat last night, I wish we would stop developing Celtic players. Obviously, after how well we developed Ryan Christie for yourselves, Adam Montgomery certainly less so. But it came out this morning when we were recording this on the 22nd of June, and the Scotsman Joel Sked had an article that stated that the club is certainly working towards the possibility of looking into making this deal permanent. Mm-hmm. If only they could have done that at the time of announcement, they would have saved a lot of uproar on Aberdeen Twitter. Anyway, Colin, do you actually think that there is a possibility Liam Scales could see a future at Aberdeen, or are Celtic crying out for his type of presence in the team and maybe looking to see how he does at Aberdeen first and foremost?
I think it's a very difficult one, Glenn, when you look at it. He's someone who hasn't had a lot of football at Celtic. He's obviously one who's very highly thought of by the Irish people that have seen him play for Shamrock the season before. He's shown glimpses of what he can do. Interestingly, you guys are going to be playing him as a left centre-back. We didn't get to see him playing in that position. In fact, I think he'd made one appearance in that position for about 20 minutes. Most of the time he was adopted at left-back, and he was a sort of attacking full-back in that sense. So we have been looking for a left-sided centre-back for a while. Whether he goes on to be the answer in the long term or not will probably depend on how his performances go at Pittodrie, but I guess that's a sort of double-edged sword. You want him to do well when he's out on loan, but then the potential is that Aberdeen want to keep him, the sort of fee then goes up, and that makes sense why Aberdeen are trying to negotiate a fee just now in advance. I think that the fee was roughly around £500,000, which is about 150,000 more than what Celtic paid for him this time last summer. I don't know. He's obviously got a long time left on his contract here at Celtic. His contract doesn't expire until 2025, so he'll still have 2 years roughly when he comes back. It'll be an interesting one to see how he develops over that time. In my opinion, I think he'll suit Scottish football really well. He's tall, he's physical, and he's got a lot of pace, which will probably help the Aberdeen backline, because that's something I think, if you can admit yourself, it's not been the quickest backline. You get a striker in behind, and sometimes he's away from them. It's an older team that Aberdeen had, so bringing in sort of young, fresher blood will help them out. And I'm just excited to see how much game time he is given and how quickly he settles into that Aberdeen side. So, I mean, look, I know there's obviously this concern up in the northeast about developing players for other teams and stuff like that, but it's not as if it's only Celtic or it's only Rangers or it's only other teams. You look at guys like James Maddison coming up and doing so well. you have to look at it. Is it the fact that you're now getting a player that potentially could have been out with the wage restrictions or the transfer fee right now, and you're getting him in the short term? And yes, it is short term as I'm looking at it as a loan deal, but if Liam Scales is part of the team that can take you from third last season to top 3, top 4 this season, even in that short period of time, that has to be worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. It will be worth it if we can see the development. I think you're right. We did need improvements, certainly defensively. I was having a discussion with somebody last night about the next priority as a goalkeeper. But first and foremost, we need to sort the defence because, as you said, too many times teams got in behind our backline far too easily. Obviously, we've added a bit of height in Liam Scales, a bit of pace, and certainly from speaking on his Red TV interview, he seems to be very comfortable with the ball at the feet.
Mm-hmm.
As you said, maybe something you've not seen on his time at Celtic, how comfortable he is in his preferred position, which he stated at left centre back. But I suppose from an Aberdeen point of view, with Jack McKenzie, obviously had his injury problems last season at left back. Also, Johnny Hayes obviously getting on a bit, turning 35 soon as well. It's good maybe that we've got cover in there with a player that is comfortable at left back and wing back if we want to adopt a 3-5-2 kind of formation this season as well. From your time watching Celtic last season and seeing Liam Scales, I suppose what can we expect from him if he was to be played out of position, if you want, from his point of view as a left back, left wing back?
I think what you're looking at is someone who, as you mentioned earlier, very comfortable on the ball, loves to get forward. If you look back to his goal that he scored at Tannadice, he starts the move at left back. Obviously, we were playing the inverted fullbacks last season, so he was a bit further in the park. But he continues his run forward, and he's always looking to overlap and support whoever's playing on the left-hand side. When he gets the ball, he's roughly about 20 yards out on the left-hand side, and he's got a lovely left foot that puts it into the back of the net. He had 2 goals, 2 assists last season. He is someone who naturally does look to get forward in the first instance and is very quick. So you're looking at having that option of someone who being comfortable on the ball to lead the line, whether he's playing left back or left centre back, to kind of push the team forward. I think when you look at it, I can't remember the last Aberdeen centre half that was maybe like that. I don't know. You probably correct me on who it would be, but you're looking for that player to sort of be the first line of attack, so that when he gets the ball off the goalkeeper, you're not just trying to play it up to the midfield. You're not trying to play the long ball. It's the playing out from the back. I know Stephen Glass tried to do that last year, but I don't think the players were there to do that. They didn't have the capability. Scales would have sort of fitted into that as well, and it's obviously very different from what I think Aberdeen fans were used to watching last year. But when you're looking at the players that you're bringing in, and even the young Dutch boy, I think if they had a combination down the left-hand side, it would be very interesting to watch with the pace and power that the two of them would have.
Yeah, it certainly adds a different dynamic to the team this season going forward. And as I said, maybe a bit more optimistic about the deal if there is that negotiation that can be done on securing Liam Scales on a more permanent basis, or if he turns out to be like Adam Montgomery, then I'm happy that we haven't signed him permanently. Of course,
that's the thing, isn't it, Glenn? I mean, we were speaking about this when Montgomery signed. Now, I still think Montgomery's got a bright future ahead of him. It didn't really work out for him up north, but we've seen that for other loan deals where players go out on loan. So look at Declan McManus. I mean, obviously big things thought of him up in Aberdeen, kind of made it up there, didn't do it. Went out on loan to Morton, scored 20 odd goals. Now he's scoring goals in Wales. A player needs the position and the club to suit. It's the same with the likes of Shankland as well. Shankland, a lot of people say couldn't really make it in the Premier League. He had opportunities at you guys and obviously at Dundee United, and then he moves abroad. So it's interesting. I think Scales, because he's had a bit of time in Scotland and also the League of Ireland, I don't think is too dissimilar from the Scottish League. I think he'll find the transition a bit more natural, and getting that game time, you can only hope that he'll develop the same way that someone like Anthony Ralston developed for Celtic last year, because he was given that game time and given the opportunity to perform.
I think, given the game time is certainly a guarantee, given that even if there's uncertainty from the fans towards the signing, as I've stated, with it being a loan deal, it's very much clear that Jim Goodwin is a manager that very much favours or fancies Liam Scales, obviously trying to sign him from Shamrock before Celtic obviously pipping St Mirren to the post in this securing his signature. So, he'll be playing for a manager that wants to see him do well as well, a manager that knows his game. So I don't think there's any question that he'll get good game time. But again, for me, the biggest disappointment is we won't get to see that on the opening day of the season. When, regardless how we view that fixture, you want to start the season well. It's obviously been well documented on our away form of recent last season anyway. It wasn't the best, so we want to start the season well. And if this was the left-sided centre back that Jim Goodwin wanted us to be excited about, it's very disappointing he's not going to feature in the first game of the season.
Well, here's the thing, Glenn. See, when you look at it, Aberdeen obviously finished third bottom last season, right? And you know what the sort of prize money is for finishing there. You take a look at the teams that finished in the top 5 and the kind of revenues that are going to be generated for finishing in that position. Now, obviously, Aberdeen have done very well to sell Calvin Ramsey, but when was the last time that an Aberdeen player moved for any sort of money before that? You're going back to well, even McKenna, when you look at that, it's not as if this is happening on a regular basis. And with things like the new stadium development and the training ground and things like that, the finances aren't exactly fully extendable. So to get someone like that, it might have to be a loan deal. But say, for example, Aberdeen go on to finish third or finish fourth next season, with having that guaranteed revenue coming in from Europe, then you can look at making things like a permanent deal possible for someone like Liam Scales. It's all about kind of playing it. I think Jim Goodwin will play it smart at Aberdeen. I don't think you'll see a lot of players coming in on big money. I don't think you'll see big transfer fees being spent as much as maybe a lot of Aberdeen fans will want to do so because of how bad last season went. But can you imagine if you went on to spend that sort of money and then still finished in the bottom 6? Where are you going to? Where do you draw the balance? Do you know what I mean? It's almost like you've got to have one good season to then pay for itself in the next couple of seasons. Because as Celtic can tell you, for going for the 10 in a row, money can't always buy you the title. We spent 20 million and we were dreadful. So it's in this sort of day and age, it's being shrewd in the transfer market that's going to get you places. Tam Courts barely spent a penny last year until he bought Tony Watt, and there they found themselves playing European football next year.
Money can't also buy you top 6, but then we never even really bought anyone last season.
Well,
but Colin, people will argue that once again you've come on to this podcast and spoken far too much sense, and not let us Aberdonians overreact to everything that we normally do. Because maybe that initial reaction to the signing of Liam Scales was potentially over the top, as you've explained. If he does well and gets us into Europe next season, maybe people will have a different perspective of it. But obviously, when that is initially announced, you are going to get the negative connotations around it. I think it's to be expected. Obviously, viewing developing a rival's player, but again, I think, as I said, very level-headed as always on here, Colin. It's been a pleasure to get your opinions on Liam Scales and what he can bring to the club. And as I said, we'll catch up with you in a few weeks' time as we look ahead to the opening day of the season, as football is slowly coming back. So thanks for taking the time to speak to me today on Liam Scales, and look forward to catching up in a few weeks' time.
No worries. All the best for the Premier Sports Cup games.
Thanks very much. I'm glad you had to get that in. Well, Callum, that was Colin Watt's thoughts there. As ever, very sensible and level-headed with his approach. And before we speak about it, I suppose we should give a few shout-outs to folks that are tuning in. Former guest of the show, Alan, watching live in Sydney. Hope you're enjoying your Friday evening. Looking forward to the weekend over there. And Ryan watching on his big screen TV down in Leeds. I'm glad you enjoyed my graphic design attempts. But Callum, what's your thoughts after listening to those comments from Colin on Liam Scales?
I'm certainly a lot more relaxed. I think within the initial half an hour of the signing being announced, I was like, oh, God, not another bloody loan from Celtic. We know how this turns out. And I thought, ball completely in their court, suits them entirely. They can then, if he does do well, they can hike up that price, or, he'll develop and be a better player for them. But also, combined with Colin's sensible words, and Jim Goodwin mentioned that they are still working hard on trying to get Liam Scales on a more permanent deal, I'm feeling a lot better about it. And I think he does offer something that we don't have. He's left-sided centre-backs, not something easy to come by. A good ball player, decent in the height as well. And as annoying as he won't play in at minimum 3 games this season against Celtic, if we don't make it permanent in January, that is, at least for the rest of the games, he will be there. And if he's the best available player, it's someone that Jim Goodwin has, had an eye on for a very long time, wanted previously at when he was at St Mirren, when Scales was playing in the League of Ireland. It's someone he clearly likes a lot, so I'm pretty happy about it. But I do, Skolska, yes, that is one thing that does annoy me a little bit. I am excited about the thought that we won't have to see Gallagher and Bates, but starting with the first game of the season, we might have to see one of them, which isn't fantastic. Glenn, are you happy with it?
Yeah, that's the point for obviously those that aren't tuning in live and maybe listening to this episode. The point that Skolker makes is that if he is going to be a first choice centre back, we're already weakened for the opening game of the season. The point, of course, I made to Colin as well. And as you said, for hopefully providing 3 games minimum, 4 if we make the top 6, assuming Celtic don't have a terrible season and find themselves in the bottom 6, of course, is that we are weakened for those games. But I think, like yourself, Callum, that initial reaction to the transfer for me was one of huge frustration that once again we are seen as developing a player for Celtic. And then it comes out over the next 24 hours that Aberdeen are in fact looking to make the deal permanent. And I think even listening to Liam Scales' interview on Red TV, I was a bit more encouraged by the signing. We've still got 2 more signings to speak about, but this was a signing that I'm assuming Jim Goodwin was alluding to as the one that would excite fans. If it was, he maybe misread the room on that. But he's a confident ball player. He likes to take the ball out of defence. And I think, we're going to speak about Anthony Stewart in a second. It's certainly contrasting to his style. But he's also going to be playing for a manager that clearly loves him. Jim Goodwin tried to sign him from Shamrock before Celtic. Celtic managed to grab him instead. So there's obviously that desire to work William Scales from Jim Goodwin. And I think when you've got a manager that believes in you, that will hopefully help him flourish. It's just unfortunate that right now we don't have the option to secure his services on a more permanent basis if he does prove to be a good player for us.
Absolutely, but I don't think we'll be doomed. I think if Celtic are prepared to let him leave right now, given the fact he's on loan, we're probably in pole position to sign him, and also the fact that at least that if they're working on trying to get it to be more permanent, then the fact he's in the door now, start of preseason, before we go away to Spain, before we start our preseason games, I quite like that. Just get him in the door, get him settled early on, get him used to Aberdeen and all sorts. So I don't mind it too much, despite initial frustrations. And I would like to make it clear as well, Liam Scales, if you're tuning in, nothing about the player. It was more just about the deal. However, when we were listening to Colin's thoughts, and you were all listening to Colin's thoughts as well, we reached 898 subscribers as well during this live. So thank you very much to all of you for that. You seem to be been enjoying it, and it's been great for interaction. It's great to hear all your thoughts as well. If you've not already subscribed and you're tuning in, please make sure you do. Or if you're listening to the audio version later on as well, and follow us wherever that may be as well. Maybe we'll hit 900 subscribers during this live, because we've still got a bit to go.
Yeah, this live's certainly going to be long enough. We might get well into 900. We've still got lots to digest. There's, as you said, lots of interaction currently coming in on the YouTube comments. We'll get to as many as we can. And, just on Liam Scales, before we move on, one point that Kaiser makes, if Scales does well, Celtic won't let us sign him permanently. And I suppose that is the biggest fear. Again, going on about the development of Celtic players. But we'll move on to Anthony Stewart, pre-contract, as we said, from Wycombe ahead of a 2-year deal. And I was joined by George from the Wycombe Way podcast to get his thoughts on what Anthony Stewart will bring to Aberdeen. George, welcome along to Red Tinted Glasses. Thanks very much for taking the time this evening to discuss Aberdeen's fourth summer signing, experienced defender Anthony Stewart joining from Wycombe on a pre-contract ahead of a 2-year deal. And certainly judging by the Wycombe Way Twitter page the last couple of nights, it was a deal that Wycombe fans were hoping wouldn't happen, or maybe not even expecting to happen at all.
I mean, from the players that are offered contracts this summer, Anthony Stewart was seemingly one of the ones who was definitely going to sign. I wouldn't have thought that he would accept a contract from elsewhere. He's been with us since he was a young lad. He's come through our academy, which no longer exists, and is probably one of the last remaining players from that academy. It's a real shame to see him go. He's been one of us for the last 10 years. He's made some incredible achievements with us, personally and as a team. And it's a massive gaping hole now in our defence, which we need to fill before at the start of the season, because he is an incredible player.
Yeah, as you said, a player that's come through your youth academy, playing nearly 300 games for the Chairboys, 292 in total, 18 goals, 9 assists as well. But for a defender, he seems to play predominantly as a centre-back, but has, during his time, played a couple of games at left-back or right-back as well. Is centre-back his preferred position, and is he more suited to the left or right-hand side of defence?
I mean, without a doubt, centre-back is his best position, and being right-footed, he would prefer the right side of it. Ryan Tavazzoli's partnered him the last 2 seasons for Wycombe as a left-footed defender, which means Stewart gets the comfort of playing on the right. And even when we switched to a 3-back, Stewart has played on the right of the two next to him. I think he might have played across a right back younger, back in his early days, and he was just coming through the ranks. But certainly, sort of the last 5-6 years, he's only played centre back and done a brilliant job at it.
Yeah, so quite comfortable in a back 3 or back 4 then.
Absolutely. I mean, perhaps not comfortable with in a ball playing team. He'll look for a long ball. I think that comes from us having Akinfenwa and Sam Vokes for the last 5 or 6 years. He'll pick a longer ball rather than trying to play out from the back, perhaps. I don't know if that's going to affect how you play on a regular basis. But certainly comfortable in his defensive duties, more than capable at the level he's going to be playing at.
Yeah, it's slightly interesting to hear, considering when we signed Liam Scales, he says he's more comfortable with the ball at his feet, which is maybe a style that Aberdeen certainly looked to play at the beginning of last season, maybe something we'll see under Jim Goodwin this season. But Jim Goodwin calls Anthony Stewart a old-fashioned centre-back, and he'll be one of the experienced heads of our team at 29 next season, looking to maybe share advice to some of the younger players coming through. And certainly seeing tweets from Wycombe fans, he was a popular character, not just on the pitch, but also off the pitch as well.
Yeah, I mean, he's sort of one of the big reasons behind Wycombe's success in recent years. We've got a great sort of team, character around the dressing room, and Anthony was a big reason for that. Obviously, coming through the ranks, being the only player to have done that with us, and he was a big character in the dressing room. And we've lost a few of those this summer, and they're going to be difficult to replace. And I worry whether that's going to affect us next season. 1 or 2 big names leaving a club in the summer can easily be replaced, but when you start losing 3, 4, or 5, it can have a big impact.
Mm-hmm. And, as I said, a popular player. He won Players' Player of the Year in the 1920 season. Big fans' favourite, obviously, with that goal in the playoff final against Oxford. How do you see him as a player handling the expectation at a club like Aberdeen? Obviously, Aberdeen, we didn't have a great season last season, finishing 10th, and we'll certainly be, as fans, expecting to be at the right end of the table this season and competing in cup competitions. How do you think Anthony will deal with that sort of expectation from the fan base?
I mean, it can be difficult. Obviously, he's only known Wycombe in his career, other than sort of a 6-month spell at Crewe. and he came back straight after. So it can be difficult, and it is a big change of scenery. A completely different league system, going from the third tier, and where he's played all his life, apart from one season in the second tier in England, going to the Premiership in Scotland. Location-wise as well, he's been settled in London since the day he was born. It is a big location switch for him, and I wonder whether, in his case, that's going to have an impact. I hope it doesn't, and I hope he does fit in straight away. But also, as I mentioned, his play style, he is comfortable with the ball at his feet. But if he can find a long ball, he will look for that. And I hope that for his sake, he fits into the team and the culture up there as well.
Yeah, even just looking at some of his stats, he starts quite a lot of games, as you said, for Wycombe. Seems a stalwart of the team, and I suppose that was the big thing that I noticed through the tweets that you guys were putting out, is the kind of location, being a Londoner, born and bred, and now making this change up to Aberdeen. Obviously we put out a tweet that Agent Grimmer had done his job in persuading him to turn up north. Do you see that as being a big change, or is this maybe too good an opportunity to turn down for Anthony?
I can only assume that you've offered him a little bit more than we could ever have offered him. The finances will have played a part in this. Our highest earners this season were sort of ranging between 2,000 and 3,000 a week. I can only assume that you can offer a bit more than that. So even the maximum we could have offered him probably wouldn't have been enough, really, if the offers elsewhere were right. But I think, football-wise, it's obviously a step up for him in some aspects, chances of European football and everything like that. But also he's got a young family. If the money's there over the next sort of 2, 3, 4 more years, then he's absolutely right to take that for his sake and his family's sake.
Yeah, there was a few concerns that Aberdeen fans picked up on, maybe from his height. Maybe that might expose him in the physical nature of Scottish football, with long balls coming at him from over the top. How do you think he would deal with the more physical nature of Scottish football compared to, in my opinion, League One is not maybe as physical?
If I can put your minds at ease, he's been training with Akinfenwa for the last 6 years. So I'm sure he's accustomed to a physical battle, albeit in training. But I think what he lacks in height, he more than makes up for with his physical presence on the ground. He's a really strong lad. He'll fancy anyone in a one-on-one situation. Not so much the quickest either, but his awareness of the game and physicality makes up for that. He's always sort of one step ahead of where the ball's going to be. So I don't think his height's going to be a problem. Because he makes up for it in other areas of his game. So.
Yeah, no, that's really encouraging. And as I said, obviously the reaction from the Wycombe supporters. I was on the Wycombe Wonders supporters page on Facebook last night asking fans what to expect. And yeah, there's loads of positive reviews, as well as obviously shock at the move. And it's really encouraging to hear those thoughts, George. I really appreciate the time you've taken. I suppose, though, it would be amiss not to get your thoughts on another Aberdonian that's currently plying his trade in Wycombe, in Jack Grimmer, a former guest of this show. And, we've spoken briefly about that playoff win against Oxford, and Jack, in an interview that he gave to us, spoke really well about the team talk Gareth Ainsworth gave at Wembley ahead of that playoff final. How do Wycombe fans view Jack Grimmer?
I mentioned the Wycombe culture and the sense of community around the club, and he brought into that straight away. He's got a lot of time for the fans. He's really good with the younger fans as well, and I think he's one of the players that is great to have in the dressing room. He's a huge character. As far as we're all aware as fans, a very funny guy in the dressing room as well. A lot of the lads really love him. One of those players that you don't want to lose at all. He's important for the team on the pitch and off the pitch. And yeah, sort of the whole culture he's brought into is excellent to see. And he's on the pitch as well. He's playing some great football.
Yeah, well, you never know. We might be speaking again in 12 months' time about another Wycombe player coming back up north. But it all for the time being, George, it's been a pleasure chatting to you, getting the lowdown on Anthony Stewart. And he's obviously been a great servant to Wycombe. I just hope over the next couple of years he's a great servant to Aberdeen.
I'm sure he will be.
Well, Callum, that was the thoughts there from George from the Wickham Way podcast. A signing that both of us were really excited about after speaking to Jack. And what's your thoughts as well there after hearing what George had to say, just further enhancing that excitement?
Absolutely. I mean, prior to the sort of signing and when the first rumours were dotting around, I basically don't recall seeing him play ever. And had a little Google search, and I thought 5'10", 29 years old, and that was two things where I was a bit concerned about. However, George's words there has absolutely reassured me, as well as Jack Grimmer. It sounds like a fantastic reader of the game, which I think combined with skills as height, pace, and ball playing could make for a potentially very good partnership. Good balance with one being left-footed, one being right-footed too. Also, the fact that Jim Goodwin said he's going to be one of the more experienced players, that sounds good. He's played a lot of games for Wickham now at the age of 29, and we've signed a lot of young players with already a pretty young core too. So I'm quite happy with that. And the fact, we saw how Declan Gallagher got bullied by Kevin Van Veen. After he's dealt with Akinfenwa, I'm sure Kevin Van Veen will be a piece of piss for Anthony Stewart. So absolutely okay with that. And also, I suppose, his ambition at 29, London born and bred, to come up to, well, basically the other side of the country and test himself, presumably with financial incentives as well. That's got to be admired. So hopefully he can be a big part of what we're trying to achieve going forward. And the Wickham fans' reactions certainly suggest that, not only on the pitch, but off the pitch too.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope that location he finds it easy enough to settle up here, as you said, being London born and bred, and he can settle into life. And I think something that might help him settle into life up here as well, certainly on the pitches, the kind of importance Jim Goodwin seems to have put on him to be that experienced head for the younger players coming through. I'm sure, again, judging by the reaction of the Wickham fans for what he was like both on and off the pitch, it's a role that he'll certainly thrive in. But the real encouragement I took from that conversation with George was around the physicality that, as he alluded to, what he might lack in height, he more than makes up for in terms of his physical ability and reading the game. Because I know when we were speaking, when the rumours were circulating, Callum, that was a particular concern for you, his lack of height for a centre back. And I think it's going to be interesting to see if we do go with both Scales and Stewart as our centre back pairing, how that different style, how they work with each other, one being comfortable on the ball and one maybe looking for that long diagonal and getting us up the pitch quicker.
Certainly. I mean, whilst their two styles perhaps contrast, in a partnership, they could really complement each other, both sort of having strengths in their game that maybe the other one lacks at. So hopefully, on the face of things, it looks like it could be a fantastic partnership. And then if all else fails, we'll shove David Bates back in there and it'll all be okay.
Well, that I suppose that is the big question now, is what does lie for David Bates and Declan Gallagher? And that's a question that Alan does ask. Do we think Declan Gallagher will now move on? Signed as a good prospect, but has been a huge disappointment. And, I did say last season he has been unlucky with injuries, probably not really helping him and looking very uncomfortable when exposed defensively. Do you think out of the two, between Bates and Gallagher, he would be the more likely to move to pastures new?
I do think so. I certainly think with the number shift, that is showing that confidence is not lying with Declan Gallagher, and presumably Anthony Stewart taking up that number 5 spot. But I think, although David Bates also had his defensive lapses moments, certainly when he was played on the right side, he looked pretty capable, and sometimes playing out for the back was a bit of a concern, but at times also looked pretty good at it. So I think in terms of a sort of backup choice, David Bates would be preferred. But at the same time, if Gallagher is to go, then you're leaving sort of Hancock and Towler as then the backup options if neither of them go out on loan, which a little bit of a concern. But I suppose with the influx of centre midfielders that were rumoured to be getting, then I suppose maybe Ross McCrory could slot back as well.
Yeah, I do like this comment from Mark Munnick saying that he doesn't understand the Stewart's height being an issue. Willie Miller wasn't exactly a tall player, and that was something that kept springing to mind when I did see that popping up on Twitter quite a lot from fan opinions on that. But even on Declan Gallagher as well, I don't really see the number thing being a sign that he's leaving, because it's time is Motherwell. He was 31 for a while as well, whilst being captain as well. But we'll see how that plays. Now, there was no signing news on Wednesday, but there was news that broke on Wednesday that Conor Barron was entering into contract discussions over an extended contract. Fraser Pirrie earlier in the episode was on in the comments saying that he only reckons Celtic will let us sign Scales permanently if Conor Barron goes the other way. I certainly would be against that deal, but it's an interesting thought process and something that maybe could have legs in it. You never know. But Callum, that is probably one of the biggest signings we could do this summer if we get that extension lined up for Conor Barron. Although it does appear that Jim Goodwin wasn't really too happy at his agent this week, judging by his Red TV press conference, given the reports linking Conor with, again, moves to Celtic, as Fraser alluded to, but also some Serie A clubs, apparently. No coincidence, it's the same two clubs that have been linked with Calvin Ramsey and Lewis Ferguson in the past, also finding themselves linked with Conor Barron. But yeah, I don't think Jim Goodwin saw the funny side of that.
No, Jim Goodwin hates agents, and that's understandable, to be fair. In terms of the Barron thing, I think it makes a lot of sense to get him a new deal. If presumably we will end up selling him on. Hopefully it's another season or two, because he's a fantastic young player. But signing on a longer contract increases his transfer value, increasing his wage to sort of fit with what's going on in the rest of the squad, and also reward him for his performances and maybe encourage him to stay a little bit longer. It all makes sense. I just hope Fraser Pirrie is absolutely wrong, because if that was the case, then that deal sounds absolutely woeful. But other than that, basically the only thing to add is what you tweeted from RTG_podcast. If you would like to follow us, that's essentially how I feel about the Conor Barron situation. Give him what he wants, baby.
Yeah, let him sign on that dotted line, offer him whatever he wants. There was some other paper talk, if you want to call it. Liam Boyce seemed out of nowhere being linked. Not happening, but I'll do my best to look like him. I've cut my hair and shaved my beard, so I'm looking more like him than I did when I was speaking to Colin and George earlier in the week. But one striker that did come in, because Tobias Lauriston has opted for Sparta Rotterdam over Aberdeen, was Macedonian international Bojan Miovski. Now, I'm not sure if it's Miovski or Miovski. I'm sure Graham Hunter will be straight into our DMs correcting our pronunciation. But Callum, the 23-year-old, because it is his birthday today, signed a 4-year deal of recently getting his first international goal for his country against Gibraltar, and obviously, maybe more famously, getting that assist in the famous World Cup playoff win over Italy. That YouTube clip that we tweeted out from RTG_podcast, as you said, it might only be 2.5 minutes, but wow, did it get me and you and a lot of others very excited.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot to love about this deal, obviously, without having seen him actually play a game. His technique looks incredible. The fact he's left-footed as well just gets me excited, regardless, because everything looks so much better when it's on the left foot. At a young age, still 23 now, happy birthday, Bojan. Lots of room to develop on a very long contract as well. It's exciting. He's got the power. He's 6'2". I still think we can maybe benefit from another striker, maybe more of a target man coming in as well, because a lot of reports that Bojan prefers sort of being that second striker, playing off the striker, where he's allowed a bit more freedom. And I think you can even see that in that short clip as well that we'd posted. Just unfortunate that Lauritsen chose Sparta, but regardless, don't want players that don't want to be here. So forget about that. Move on. But Bojan, I am very, very, very excited about him, and perhaps more excited than I should be. Maybe I'll be let down, but regardless, I'm not going to let that ruin my spirits right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were hoping to be joined by journalist Filip Mishov to discuss the move for Bojan coming to Aberdeen, but unfortunately we couldn't work out a time to speak to him ahead of this live today. But you quoted the tweet, the thread that he put up in the middle of June on why Bojan would be a really exciting prospect. We're going to tweet that out from our Twitter account and make sure to give Philip a quick follow, because he's going to produce some more content on Bojan over the coming days. But, as part of that thread, one of the things he put out was, it was 9 goals and 6 assists last year, and then 10 and 4 this season. It's maybe not inspiring figures for those that want to have a deep dive, but some of the quality and maybe positional awareness that Bojan showed in that highlight reel that we tweeted out was really impressive. And I think that backs up what Jim says. He finds himself in the right place at the right time. He's maybe not the finished article, but with a bit of work, we're going to have hopefully a very valuable asset on our hands.
Absolutely. I mean, whilst the numbers, maybe don't set the world alight, have to remember he was playing in a struggling MTK Budapest side that did then eventually get relegated. So to still put up those numbers, pretty darn decent. But going back to that clip, some of the technique and composure, anticipation in the box, off the ball movement that he showed, regardless of the level, if you can do those things, you should be on to a pretty decent winner with the signing. And he's still got plenty of time to develop, not the finished article, but a young Macedonian international, as you mentioned, won the flick on for that game against Italy, in which they knocked them out of the playoffs. I'm pretty excited. I'm pretty excited about Bojan Miovski. I'm going with Miovski. Miovski? Miovski.
I was going with Miovski. So
okay,
one of us is going to be right. Graham, let us know.
To be honest, once he signs and once he's in the country, etc., once they've got all that sorted out, he should release a video. Sometimes they do that when they say their name and hi, I'm. I hope he does that. Yes, exactly. I hope he does that. That'll sort everything out.
And I suppose kind of on the points that you were making, Philip kind of does go into that he might need time to adjust to life in Scottish football. I think obviously we signed Gilbert Ramadani, his teammate, that might help him off the pitch anyway. But again, Philip saying that he isn't the finished product. He's pacey, he's versatile. And I think what you can see from that highlight reel is what Philip says. He displays a good amount of composure in front of goal and finds the back of the net really easily. And that did kind of stick out to me in that clips, was the composure he showed when you've got defenders flying in or he needed to cut back and then sends the keeper the wrong way with a finish. There's a really good level of awareness in that mindset when he gets in front of goal. I would feel pretty confident that 9 times out of 10 he's going to find the back of the net.
Absolutely, which really contrasts with what we were told by Tor about Tobias Lauritsen and the fact that he maybe struggled with the more easy chances. So maybe we were on to a winner with that one, avoiding it. That's what I'm going to tell myself anyway. But it's definitely encouraging. He's still very young. The fact Ramadani's in, I think that's great because it helps both of them settle, moving to not only a totally new team, but totally new part of the world, and coming over from Eastern Europe now to Scotland. It's going to be a big culture shock. You've seen how the Ramirez has dealt with it. So I think having that friendly face in there to help them both settle is actually genius from the club, to be honest. And if they're both work out to be pretty darn good players, then even better.
Yeah, and I think obviously, he's someone that has found himself in the international setup, as I said, scoring his first international goal for his country as well. He'll be viewing this move as wanting to prove that he can cut it somewhere else and also maintain his place in that Macedonian team and keep himself on the international scene as well. And I'm sure that Aberdeen can provide a good platform for him. And yeah, I am excited. You mentioned Christian Ramirez. Skoksker again in the comments saying that Miovski is going to be a good backup for Ramirez. This is an interesting one. Obviously, Ramirez back in pre-season training this week. Will he be back up? Will they be partners? Or will it just be a matter of time before Christian Ramirez leaves the club? It's going to be an interesting few weeks for the King of USA.
Certainly, want to keep an eye on with his family, of course, still back in America, whether that will be just for the duration of summer and then they'll be back. If Ramirez does stay, I don't know. But things with Christian Ramirez, not heard a lot of talk about links elsewhere to move back to America, really, at all. So I think it would be an interesting one. I would like to see him come back now with actual competition for places, having had a rest. I would like to see him get back amongst the goals because we know he can be a good player. We know he can be a great instinctive finisher. So let's hope that with all the sort of added pieces we're putting together, this season will be a better one than last season for Ramirez. So let's not forget, it was still relatively good despite tailing off towards the back end of the season.
Yeah, absolutely, especially for his first season in Scotland as well. But that covers the signings made this week, Callum. As we said in the Sky Sports News ticker that's rolling along the bottom of the screen during this episode is, what's next? Jim Goodwin hoping for another 4 or 5, but saying that, people have got to be patient. There is impatient people out there. I'm not sure if he's referring to me and you specifically or the fan base more widely, but he does include
Dave
himself.
Cormack.
Yeah, or Dave Cormack. Yeah, we'll come on to that one in a second. But he does say he is also impatient and is hoping to secure more deals. But what area do you see as being the next priority? Alan McCarley saying for him, goalkeeper is now number 1 priority. Ipswich, the newspaper down in Ipswich before we came live, saying that Aberdeen are in talks to sign Hladky from Ipswich. Do you think that is the next priority, or do we still need to kind of bolster our front line a bit more?
I think my order of priority probably goes number 10, so creative midfielder, essentially, see Conor Ronan, which we'll come on to. Then probably a goalkeeper at that point to help push Joe Lewis or maybe displace him as number 1. Another striker, because then right now we've currently got Miovski and Ramirez, but another option in there would be absolutely fantastic. And then if we're still in the market for another one, which apparently we could be, a winger. I would like a winger, something a little bit different as well, something a bit more excitement that can provide for these new forward players as well. And then if we're still going for it, then we'll get Jacob Davenport in when Ferguson leaves as well.
Yeah, well, just a small shopping list there, but certainly hearing from Jim Goodwin, it sounds like Matty Kennedy will be one of those wingers. Obviously, we didn't see a lot of him next season, but Conor Ronan has been a name that has been bandied about a lot, including from the chairman, who obviously isn't patient. Well, he's saying that we need to be patient. In his tweet last night when someone asked if Ronan and McGrath were on their way. Would you be excited by those 2 names coming in? I think Conor Ronan definitely on the back of what we saw last season.
Absolutely, I would be excited. I think I prefer Conor Ronan over Jamie McGrath. I don't know what likelihood of getting them both in would be.
I think Goodwin alludes to that if it was McGrath, it would have to be a loan because of his contract length at Wigan. Okay. It would be quite expensive to take him away from there.
So that would suggest that they would probably be leaning towards perhaps Conor Ronan, because I think a permanent deal would be more likely. It'd be great if we can beat Hearts to him, who've been rumoured to be interested in him as well. And also, I just think I was very impressed, particularly when he played against us, with how good he'd been. So I think I prefer Conor Ronan. And then also, as we mentioned, there's still the Jacob Davenport talk. Mm-hmm. It'll be very, very interesting. And honestly, I'm super duper excited. I think this is maybe the best part of the season. The season's not even started yet. I just love transfers so much.
Absolutely. And there's been some interesting comments. Again, you play Ramirez in the box. He scores. Dropping deep is not his style. So that would be interesting in terms of a partnership with Miovski if we don't get anybody else in. I also think it'd be interesting if we do get the likes of Conor Ronan, because some of his delivery was exceptional for St Mirren. Ryan Does Base asks, where do we think Watkins will fit into this team next season? When you were speaking about strikers, is he a striker?
I don't see him. I don't see him as your typical sort of number 9, whereas I think Miovski can do that. Honestly, sometimes I've been forgetting about Marley Watkins, the fact he's even here. I'm not going to lie. But yeah, as a winger, as a sort of supporting cast, ideal. I keep forgetting that he's here, but how much he'll be fit, who knows. But on his day, absolutely quality. And I do agree that not a solo striker, absolutely. We saw that at times when he tried to do it. Plus, physically, he's okay, but he likes to drop deep. And then if he drops deep, then there's nobody left up there as that sort of focal point. So as a supporting member, that's where I prefer Marley Watkins.
Yeah, Yeah, absolutely. And I think I kind of agree with BSTRL saying that he should be on the wing. We saw against Hibs how devastating he was against Lewis Stevenson in that game towards the back end of last season. But I also do agree with the point where he says more of an impact sub for left or right wing. I do think, that physical presence that's got maybe an uncharacteristic turn of pace about him for such a tall man would be good against tiring defences. Obviously, with his fitness and injury concerns that we've had, I do probably again agree on that he probably won't feature much from the start. But again, interesting dynamics, and maybe we'll get an insight into some of our tactics when the team take on Buckie at the weekend. But by all accounts, we won't be seeing Yilba Ramadani. Obviously, Lewis Ferguson still in Barbados on holiday, given extra time off for his international duty. But with both Yilba and Bojan, the club are waiting currently on work permits. So I'm not sure if that means they're not allowed currently into the UK. And whether or not they'll be able to train with the first team in Spain. Of course, the squad head off to Spain on Monday for a week's training camp where they will take in a couple of closed-door friendlies. Listening to the interviews on Red TV this week from the new signings, players certainly looking forward to that. A good chance to not only meet their new teammates, but bond with them and kind of get a better understanding with them, because we probably do learn more about each other when you are away from home and stuck up in a hotel. I think it was Jayden Richardson that alluded to that. But as I said, Aberdeen travel north to Victoria Park to face Buckie Thistle, the Highland League runners-up in Spiders Testimonial. Buckie are streaming the game on their website for £10 if you cannot make the game. If you can, it's pay at the gate. It's £10 for adults and £5 for under 16 and over 65s. That's the concession prices. As I said, pay at the gate, no advance ticket sales for that game. Your first chance to see Jim Goodwin's men in action this season. As well, information has been released for the first Premier Sports Group stage game against Peterhead, taking place a week on Sunday, 2 weeks on Sunday. The tickets are on sale from Monday online for those with 400 loyalty points. Wow, whoever thought we would be speaking about needing 400 loyalty points for playing Peterhead?
I know, nobody. And unfortunately, I won't even be able to make that because I will be in Glasgow, of all places. So I'll be at Transmit. And I'm currently trying to convince my dad to go to the game against Buckie, because if I try and drive up there, I will get lost. I am hopeless at that kind of thing. So try and convince him. Hopefully, I could be in attendance there. But to be fair, got to be commended. Very reasonably priced for that game, and I'm sure it'll be a good attendance for the testimonial.
Certainly looks to be a nice day for watching football. On Saturday, judging by the forecast, I'll be at the Kelpies before Blair Drummond on Sunday, but I will be at Peterhead instead. So you do one game, I'll do the other. We'll make sure we're covering each other on that. Tickets for those with less than 400 points for the Peterhead game are on sale from Tuesday for 300 plus points, 200 from Wednesday, and general sale thereafter. Tickets priced at £15 for adults, £8 for concession, which is under 18 and over 65. Under 12s go free with any paying adult, so that means I can sneak Rory in, and that is for the standing area. Seated section is £17 for adults and £10 for concession, £2 for under 12s. Obviously, very limited seating available at Peterhead in that section. But we, of course, Calum, when we come back next week, we'll probably do another Friday live. We're going to probably continue with these Friday lives up until the season starts. It's better to round up the action in one episode than trying to force out 3 or 4 in a week. Fair play to the ABZ guys managing that. So certainly a lot of work that needs to go on behind the scenes for that. But yeah, we'll stick to the one episode. It's been really good catching up again on Friday. Lots of interaction from those of you that have sat through this live with us as well. So we do really appreciate that. Of course, if you have been watching, as Calum said, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. I'm not sure if we've reached 900 or not. We'll find out when we come off. I think we were 1 away at one point, Calum. And as well, if you are listening on audio, we'll get this out very quickly so you're not too far behind on hearing all the latest information from the goings on at Tawdry. But Calum, thanks again for joining me. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy Buckie if you do make it up. please don't get
Thank you.
lost.
I will try my best, but there's no guarantees. You might need to get someone else to fill in next week, so I don't know if I'll have returned by then.
I mean, it's not that far away, but you can't go wrong. But we will be back next week, rounding up yet more of the latest news from Aberdeen. Maybe we'll have a keeper and another midfielder. Conor Ronan, anybody? See you then.